or we've lost it during our childhood, lost that ability.
Sure.
The more that we practice remembering lifetimes now, in this lifetime, the more we practice doing that, the more agile we will be at accessing that kind of information. So it actually improves your ability to remember in your next lifetime, because you're exercising that muscle.
Right, gotcha. That's expanding the consciousness.
Right, right.
Okay. So how many lifetimes do people usually experience?
Well, we experience, how many times do we have lifetimes? It could be infinite. So, I mean, we can't put a number on that. Anybody that tries to put a finite number, I would question their knowledge of this. So it's just like, I don't know what the example would be, but we can, if I were to die tomorrow, I could come back and incarnate right away. So I could, and if my pattern is to do that, to maybe die young and incarnate right away and just, keep coming in and having physical experiences, I would probably have a lot more lifetimes than someone who, lives a long life, and when they die, they stay out for a period of time, and then choose to come in again, and they do that. So I might say, well, I've had, 1,000 lifetimes, and the other person says, well, I've had 100, but, it's all possible. Yes, that's true. In the broader, bigger picture, we all have one lifetime, because it's one consciousness, one life, but we just happen to be in the physical for a period of time, and then we're out of the physical for a period of time, and then we're in the physical for a period of time. So even though it's technically one lifetime, what you and I are talking about is how many times do we actually dive into that physical manifestation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because, when you say lifetime, it kind of says, when you say, okay, it's one big lifetime, but you're still kind of saying, well, it's got a beginning and an end. And that's a whole nother show, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And it may even be beyond any of our real knowledge,
right.
that beginning and that end thing. So there's a lot of speculation about that.
Okay, so can you be your own ancestor?
You could. I've had a few people discover that they were, in fact, their own, grandparent or great-grandparent. It's not really necessary. I think some people get confused between your own legacy of your past lives and the legacy of your physical family here. And, while we have discovered that some people have been their own ancestor, two things occur. One is there may be more people that are their own ancestor that I'm simply, they don't happen to have that show up in a given session in my office, or, more typically we're incarnating in soul groups, but not necessarily in a lineage of a particular bloodline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since you brought up that bloodline kind of thing, isn't there a lot of souls, I guess, that incarnate out of their so-called bloodline, just because the body is available? You know what I'm saying?
You mean
they have
out of their
no
soul
connection.
Group?
Yeah, they have no connection with their parents. They have no connection with their grandparents. It's like they just kind of came in that body,
Right, exactly. In fact, in my hypnotherapy practice, I do work with people who say, I don't even know why I'm in this family. I'm not like anybody. I'm
right.
not really connected to anybody in this family. And what'll happen is, for one thing, is maybe they chose the body simply because it gave them something they wanted, and who the family was not really a factor in that decision. In other words, I want to be a healer. We'll just use it as an example. If I wanted to be a healer and there's a body that's available and I want to come in because I want to be, have the opportunity to go to a specific school or meet certain people or have this pathway, and there's an opportunity. But it could be that I'm totally unconnected to any of these other people. I just
Right.
come in because that's the opportunity. The other thing that happens, which is more frequent than people are maybe willing to want to know, is that oftentimes we don't make a decision at all. We're just out there kind of confused. We don't really know what's going on out there in the astral. We're without a body. We're missing people. We just don't know what to do with ourselves, and maybe we're rebellious and we're not paying attention to help, or maybe we don't know how to hear the help or see it because we haven't really been working on those muscles, that psychic ability to hear and see things that are not physical, and so we're a little lost, and it's almost like just dropping into a hole somewhere. You're just floating around, and boy, there's a place I can go, and it's got a body, and I understand bodies, and I don't understand where I am here, and they just go there. They just drop into that body and take it.
Wow, I'd never heard of that one before.
I know.
I mean, there's no guidance at all. I mean, even oversoul guidance or anything. It's just like
sure, but you'd have to be able to hear it and see it. So one ghost talking to the other. That one ghost is going to have to be able to perceive the other ghost, and if you haven't been using those muscles, it can be hard to do. It's just, people, the stuff I teach is a little different than what's out there because a lot of people only want to tell you the good news. They just want it all to seem really nice. And there is a lot of good news, but there's some work we have to do. And by just saying, your guides will take care of you when you get out there and all the decisions will be made and they'll just put you in a nice, great place, it really makes a person lazy. If somebody was going to cook all your meals for you and dress you every day, you wouldn't learn to cook. You wouldn't learn to lift a finger. And then you get left on a deserted island somewhere and you don't have the survival skills. So, while other people are teaching that all of that is taken care of, I think it's really important for people to understand that we really need to do our part here.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be exercising these muscles and building these muscles and these talents and gifts so that we are more prepared to not just be a dependent when we're out there, which most people are. When they die, they just become dependents on their spirit guides. We're just babies on that side. And I, for one, don't want to just be a baby over there. I want to have some mature skills that I can contribute, and be a little self-sufficient in what happens to me when I get there.
Right. Now, would you bring in the concept of old souls, only meaning someone that has experienced a lot of incarnations that would make them an old soul in that sense, where they're more mature in the consciousness process on the other side?
Right. So, old and new is kind of a misleading term, but right, there are people who are much more skilled and wise, and we can see that on the physical. What happens out there is very much reflected in what's going on here. You can meet a person who's in their 70s that are not very wise, that don't make good decisions, that haven't really grasped their life lessons, and you can meet people who are 7 and 8 years old who are wise beyond their years.
Sure.
And in the same way, as spirits and souls, we have those same attributes. There are souls who people would term to be old souls, but it's just that they've allowed themselves to become denser in their wisdom and in their ability to, their skill levels and things. And so we term them as old souls, but really they may not have had any more lifetimes or been around any longer than anyone else, but they are actually doing something with, they're taking their experiences in and and keeping their experiences and using them and allowing them that to help their conscious evolution.
It's almost like a soul growth kind of thing.
Exactly.
So what exactly, I mean, if we could say exactly, what's going on in between lives then?
Yeah. Okay. You've got all the big questions, don't you? We're going to give everybody the advanced course here. Well, between lives, it's not a set agenda. Just like if I, and people think, well, when you die, then you go through these levels, or this specific thing will happen, and if we look at a given life, if I say to you, when you're born, what's going to happen to you from the time you're born to the time you die?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's different for every single human being. Some people are going to have a very angry life. Some people are going to have a very violent life. Some people are going to have a very highly educated life. Others will become skilled in sports and athletics, and other people are going to be kind and loving and devote their lives to helping other people. So everybody's experience is going to be absolutely unique to themselves. In fact, as we go into past lives, we find that from life to life, our experiences are different. So, what I experienced in my last life was not exactly what I'm experiencing in this life. So in the same way, everybody who dies is going to have a little different experience with what happens between lives. And they're going to have a different experience when they die in this lifetime from the experience they had when they died after the last life. So it's a huge range, and again, it's an infinite number of possibilities. So, what will be important, to kind of give your listeners the key to this, the important things are really, really working on your imagination, because you need that. You can't just look down and say, this is a table, I'm sitting on a chair, I'm wearing these clothes and I want to eat dinner, that sort of thing. There's none of that's going on. So your imagination is creating everything, and it's manifesting just like we are learning here in the physical how to manifest by using our imagination first. The same thing occurs there. It requires our imagination to manifest, and it also requires our imagination to grasp and to understand what's going on in the astral. So first is the imagination. Second, I think, is for me, is to know what your purpose is. Because if you have a purpose, then by having a purpose and a value system, you know what it is and where you want to go, what it is you want to do and where you want to go. So if you're floating out there, you've got infinite choices. Do you want to learn something? Do you want to find some people? Do you want to look for another body? What body? What would be the purpose of coming into the next body, and what would be the criteria of that body? Do you want a body, where you can get a certain education or have certain experiences or be with a certain person, that sort of thing. So you'd want to have a fairly clear idea of those goals that you want for yourself, so that even between lifetimes you will know how to aim yourself, have a needle on the compass, so you're not just wandering around like we do in this life if we don't have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.